Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this MSM Live Expert Interact webinar on international education strategies for small rural colleges and universities during and after the pandemic. My name is Jim George. I am the Manager Global Marketing Office overseeing US institutions at MSM. On behalf of all of us at MSM, I hope that you, your colleagues, your communities and families are well during this time, and all of you had a great weekend. Before I hand over to Dr. Alex Parnia to get us started, I did want to take a moment to thank everyone on the line who are a part of MSM Network. MSM is a leading platform serving the international education sector. It is MSM's vision to create the most compelling international education organization serving students, agents, and institutions. MSM's mission is to make international education accessible to all. MSM partners with 41 institutions from Canada, USA, UK, and Europe, having an on-ground presence in 17 countries and catering to more than 3,000 agents globally. For more information, visit our website, www.msquaremedia.com. We'll also request you to follow us on our LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages to get all updates on our upcoming events. We have a fabulous webinar coming up today, all about international education strategies that small rural colleges and universities need to inculcate during and after the pandemic to ensure smooth transition for inbound international students. And we'll be going over some more things shortly. I will run through the housekeeping requirements that are needed for today's presentation and the Zoom webinar platform. As a reminder, everyone is currently muted and will encourage you to type in your questions and comments throughout the presentation in the Q&A session present in the control panel. Later on in the presentation, we'll have a brief moment for Q&A, at which point you'll also be encouraged to type in your questions. I would like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Alex Parnia, President, USA at MSM. With more than 30 years of experience performing a variety of successful roles at elite academic institutions, he specializes in crafting innovative and scalable solutions and matrices to the international education sector. Dr. Alex will be introducing our eminent speaker, Dr. Frazier. This webinar is also being recorded for anybody who would like to listen to it afterwards, and we look forward to discussions today. We are really excited to get started, and I'm going to hand it over now to Dr. Alex Parnia. Dr. Alex, over to you.
Jim, thank you for that wonderful introduction, and a warm welcome from the United States to all participants at this MSM webinar. We are very delighted that you are able to attend this important session and learn about some strategies that a small university is using to deal with the COVID-19. This is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Frazier, who is a very good friend and also Provost of the Iowa Wesleyan University, a college that is a university that is in the Midwest America. And I've known Dr. Frazier for a long time. And if you don't know what Provost does in a university, he's a second in command and he operates all the academic programs on campus. And he's in charge of all the students and faculty and staff. So this is a great opportunity for us to hear from Dr. Frazier about the things that he has done to prepare Iowa Wesleyan University for upcoming semester in fall 2020. Of course, COVID-19 has presented us with major challenges, and Dr. Frazier has taken many steps to be able to bring students back on campus and have opportunity for them to continue with their education. Dr. Frazier is not a stranger to the international environment. He has spent many years in Africa, and he has traveled in India extensively, in many other Southeast Asian countries. And I consider him as a citizen of the universe, a citizen of the world. So with that, I will be, with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Frazier for him to share his preparation for fall of 2020 and beyond.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Parnia, and thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. To all my friends in South Asia, I say namaste. Excited to share with you guys just a little bit about what we're doing, but just keep in mind, though, that one size doesn't fit all. So I will be sharing some advice and some things that we're doing at our institution. Keep it in context. We're not a large state university in a major city like Chicago or Atlanta or even in Columbus, Ohio. So a little bit different, and that's why we can bring a little different perspective because we're located out in rural America. We are actually located, and I'm going to show you just a little background on Iowa Wesleyan so you'll understand the context here. So let's start out to show you where we are in Iowa. And so it'll kind of make you smile if you know a little bit about U.S. geography. I learned this a few years back, is if the Midwest was a chef, this is the chef hat, Minnesota, and then here's the face, which is Iowa, see the nose, and then just like us American cooks, a nice tummy here down to the feet in Arkansas. So we're actually in Iowa, Mount Pleasant, and you can see our distance from some of our major cities that you know of, like Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis, and Kansas City. We're only about 9,000 people in our town, so for many people's estimation, we would be like a village, not a very large place, but a very, very diverse campus. Iowa Wesleyan itself is ranked #1 in all the regional Midwest colleges for international students, and you can see this beautiful picture of just some of our students here at one of our buildings during a festival where we were walking with the international students, showing off our culture and diversity, which is a great strong point of our institution. About 50% of the students here on campus come from diverse backgrounds. So not only do we have to meet the cultural differences that come from different parts of the world, but also different parts of the U.S. So there's a different distinct cultures from Southern culture to maybe Midwestern culture to Western culture, Southwestern, just in the United States too. So it's exciting being able to do that. So just another quick example for you guys to show you a couple things. You can see some of you all may recognize the Festival of Colors. So we were doing the Holy Festival. So my family and I were participating in that with our students. But just to share with you what happened originally when the pandemic started to hit America. When the U.S. started to see this in March, what happened was we gave options to our international students especially, and any student that lived outside of a 150-mile radius from the campus. We gave them the option to apply for what we called a hardship waiver. And on that hardship waiver, they had the opportunity to stay on campus. We allowed all those students that applied that had legitimate reasons to stay. Some of them didn't have airline tickets until later and they couldn't leave. But what we had to do is we had to decrease the size of campus because of the fear of how fast the pandemic could spread. Lots of information, not as much information was available in March as it is today, and we're getting more and more information that's allowed us to prepare. But we gave a hardship waiver. I ended up keeping just on this campus, because keep in mind I'm about 700, maybe 750 students on this campus altogether. So once again, a small campus in a rural environment. But I kept about 50 students on campus. Most of those were international students. Altogether, I have usually 120, 130 international students, but 50 ended up staying on campus. We provided meals for them. We provided grocery trips. We did all kinds of different things to help those students. But some of the items that we did that was important is we did meal delivery of food. So we had food delivered, and also understanding that international students were the largest group, we actually did a lot of things to make sure that we had vegetarian options, that we had food that might have, you know, some different things in it that maybe an American student wouldn't be as happy with. But, you know, instead of cheeseburgers and French fries, we did have a lot of stir fries with tofus and other things. We tried to stay with either veg or chicken just to meet some of the different standards. It was important for my Muslim students, my Hindu students, students from different parts of the world. So we did that for the last few months, and I've had quite a few, like I said, international students that stayed on campus. So we did that also because we realized if international students went back home with embassies closing, and like they are right now in most places, and consulates are not open, they couldn't get their visa renewed, and that would impede many of them being able to come back, or just travel restrictions in their country. Some countries have certain travel restrictions that don't allow people to leave their country and then be able to return either right now. So we have to be very careful that we're trying to meet as many standards as possible and providing a safe environment for our students. So just a couple things on I-20s. Specifically, what my philosophy is, and I try to share this with my other colleagues in NAFSA and other international education groups like MSM, is, I'm going to continue to admit as many students as I can, pre-COVID or post-COVID, it doesn't matter. I'm going to admit the international students, but I'm also going to be very careful to give some conditional admissions, because right now when you can't get official transcripts, because maybe your university, your uni is closed, or your prep school is closed, and you can't get those transcripts, or as we say, foreign credentials. If you can't get those credentials, then we make sure that the students are still allowed to get conditional admissions, and we're not holding it up because they can't go down to one of their universities and be able to get a copy of that. So trying to be careful and be flexible. The other thing is, we are mailing documents still, and because of like MSM being a group that does a wonderful job with agents all over the world, specifically in places like South Asia, the African continent, and others, it is great to be able to send bulk 5 or 6 I-20s at a time, because here's the thing you have to be very careful about. We're not really allowed to scan I-20s to send because of cybersecurity threats. You're not supposed to scan an I-20, send it to a different country through an email or something to that effect, because of the fear that could be intercepted and manipulate it in some way. That's why when I run our SEVA system, which is how I issue I-20s, I have all kinds of unique passwords and encryptions and other things that makes it even a struggle for me to access that database when I'm not even in the United States, because it will monitor your IP address to see where you are when you've logged in, and you might get emails on that too, in case someone has been able to actually crack into your email system. But what I also do is, when I get that list of new students, I look at a detailed list of all the countries that I have potential students from. I closely monitor the country to see if there's any embassies or consulates, if they're reopening. I try to do that as best as I can, because the students should be doing that. And as agents or as other universities on this phone call, you should be doing it as well. But we also try to do it too, because we realize if I have a country where I get quite a few Spanish students, for example, from Spain, I get quite a few students from Nepal. I'm monitoring the Kathmandu embassy to make sure that we have that it's open. I've been writing them. I've sent letters trying to see when they're going to open for visas and visa renewals, because the truth is, a new student's not going to get here if they're not able to actually get that visa interview, that initial visa interview. And sometimes it's really tough to get the visa interview even when you're not in a pandemic world too. So keep that in mind. I did find a website I wanted to share with you guys that I think is interesting related to all this. So Kayak does a really good job. It's a travel agency, obviously a proprietary travel agency where you can get things. But if you look at this link, then we'll be able to share these links and other items with you if you're not able to pull those. But you can get them from my good friends from MSN, from Jim and others. But you can see here this website, when you click on it, it talks about right now, as of when I click this image, the countries that are completely closed or partially closed, reopening soon, no restrictions, and it gives you an idea of what you're dealing with. So, the United States has just started in the last few weeks. You'll see some opening in different areas, and it could be related to that. It could be related to protest. It could be related to many things, but we have seen a little bit of a spike in certain states in the United States that reopened early. So I wanted to keep that in mind too. But anyway, this is a nice resource, because this at least allows you to see what's working together. And this is a great resource, especially if you're in a U.S.-based MSM partner, a U.S.-based school that's trying to figure out other countries. And if you're in an agency that works in multiple countries, keep up to this as well. So the other thing that I always do is, because part of my academic background was State Department training through a particular institution. And so I do try to look and go online and try to figure out as much as I can a good list of restrictions and information in home countries. So not just the United States and Canada about sending students to us, but what about the students leaving a country? For example, Australia has some tight restrictions right now. New Zealand, as of a few weeks ago, did not have any active cases of COVID-19. So they've been very strict about who can leave the country, who can re-enter. So I found this immigration site actually had a good list of all the consulate closures around the world too. And then you can also start actually checking out more often what's going on in the countries of the world where you are recruiting your students or you have an agency. So that's another good one. There's plenty of these organizations. I'm just naming a couple of them, but we have many different ones in different places in Great Britain, where I actually went to school, in London, other places. But for Americans in the US and Canada, we like to use the Association of International Educators, which is called NAFSA. Once again, they have a whole really good website. It's a repository on questions just that international students are going to ask. And they're our chief advocacy group for us in Canada and the United States, because this is an organization where many of the schools in America, probably just about every school that recruits international students, is involved with NAFSA. And that website there, the NAFSA regulatory information, lots of good information there. If I were you, I would actually pin that to my browser and have it on my Chrome there, so that you can be able to pull that up at any given time, because it's constantly updated and it's really helpful. But there's other organizations that are out there, like the International Association of Educators in Australia. It's a huge business for Australia International Ed. So you can go through and check out what they're doing. They're having their own webinars and different things as well, like we do with MSM and others. And just so you know, like MSM, I know we are a partner with NAFSA because I'm on the board of MSM. So we've been involved and went to conferences of NAFSA many times. So great organization. So that's a few more resources. The other thing is, as we're practicing our namaste, this is my tiger at my school, because our school is the tiger. So he likes to dress up in traditional wear. He's wearing a kung fu or wushu outfit from China for this photo. But the biggest thing is communication. And I discovered this really during the height of the pandemic. Communicate, communicate, and communicate more. We should be doing, from institutions and also agencies, weekly email to any student that's in our network, updating them on what we know, checking on them personally, asking how life's going, and more important than anything, listening. Because some of the students, you know, they're going to have unique situations. No two people are exactly alike. That's the beauty of this world that we live in. So the great thing is, communicate, make sure you're actually actively involved and you know what's going on. For me, in our institution, we're sending out every week emails to our students about updates and curricular practical training or optional practical training or rules and regulations in the United States, and about funding type opportunities, you know, like government aid that came through the United States and other items. So keep that in mind too. But the key thing I can say as an agent and as an institution is you need to communicate with these students, because things change and we need to try to meet them where they are. A couple other quick things to kind of point out too is, you know, what we're doing is when a student is admitted to the institution, what we're doing is we are getting that student working with their academic advisor, and we can register a student before they even get here. I always tell my friends at MSM and other companies, if there's any way possible to register the student the semester ahead of time before they get here, so they can actually print off a copy of their schedule. So when they go to their visa interview, they could show that they've made some payments, that they actually have registered. For me personally, I think it shows more, as we would say, investment in coming to the institution. And I've seen a higher percentage of students get visas there. Now, I can't guarantee visas, and I would never do that. Department of State would throw stuff at me if I tried to say, you know, you could guarantee this is a higher probability. But in my experience, I can tell you, if a student has registered for classes, they can show a schedule, and they could show some type of payments, my probability of them getting a visa was much larger. Also, the other thing that we're doing too, and this is good for agencies and schools to think about too, is if a student can't get a visa and get here for the fall semester, we can do some type of either online education, and that's usually asynchronous. And this is important when I say asynchronous, meaning you don't have to be online at the same time. We did this time right now at like 1 o'clock, which was Central Standard Time in the United States. I realize for some of you all that's really late at night. Some it's the next day in Australia or Japan. For some, like my friend Dr. Parnia, it's a couple hour difference. But we realized you can't have every student on if they're from around the world. So when we do online education, it's more at your pace, but there's a lot of content that's in those courses that we have. But we also are offering something new this semester that's only been offered here in the pandemic world. Is we have a learning management system that's called Canvas. And every single class that's face-to-face is also offered in Canvas. And that companion class will have content that will include everything from a Zoom education account that we have, that my faculty will be filming classrooms or recording their classroom lectures or doing videos like we're doing now and recording over a PowerPoint. Those will be uploaded. So we could have students actually taking the classes from, let's say, Malaysia, that are actually in there taking on the learning management system, taking the course, because they might not be able to come immediately because they couldn't get their visa. So this is the part that I'm trying to pull. And once again, this is an absolutely new thing for all of us. But in this pandemic world, I'm going to try this system, and I'll be working with all the embassies that we get students from to do this. And by the way, that's from Chinese New Year or Asian New Year when we were celebrating a wonderful celebration with our students there. So what I'm doing in this hybrid format is I am allowing students to be able to come, even though our school is going to start August 24th. But if you can't get a visa till September 1st, September 15th, October 1st, or October 15th, I'm going to allow you to come, and I'll get you a letter and other things if you are participating and you're a part of the classes in our hybrid courses. That means you're actually in Canvas, you're in our learning management system, you're answering questions, you're turning in assignments, so I can show that you have been engaged. It's just not your fault that the U.S. Embassy wasn't open to renew your visa or wasn't open for you to get a new visa. So I'm trying to work around that, and any embassy that I have a student, and I'm sure my friends in MSM and others would do this, we're happy to, try to work with embassies, but most important is the college or university like Iowa Wesleyan or another one of our partners in Canada or wherever, they need to write a letter to say the student's been studying, now they're coming, because they're going to look on the I-20 or whatever document they have to enter, and they're going to know that the dates don't exactly line up. So you need to be able to explain that and make sure you have your contact information. And embassies contact me regularly if a student's coming at a different date. So I'm used to that, but I want to make this, I don't want my international students especially to suffer any more than all of us have had to in this pandemic. If they want to be here, I'm trying to make it as flexible as possible. Now, this might not work for large institutions. That's why I once again go back to tell you we're not a large institution. So, if a student does go back home or is coming in at a non-traditional time, when they go through that port of entry, that's why I say it's very important that they should have on a university letterhead. Doesn't have to be original. It can be a copy, but with a phone number and everything, so that they can be able to enter. Because as you all know, many of you all have traveled in the U.S., that it can get pretty long lines there, but you need to have your documents ready to show if you're entering at a non-traditional time of when college starts. So that's a little bit of the logistics of the immigration, a little bit of academics. Let me talk a little bit practical for you guys of what we're doing on our campuses all across North America, but specifically my campus and some of the things that we know are best practices when it comes to making our campus safe. Because if you're an agent, one of the things that you need to be able to do is you need to be able to share with the students, and more important, their parents and their families, to help them understand the precautions. Because the United States has the largest number of COVID cases of anywhere in the world. So I understand if parents are a little bit leery, a little bit nervous about their young person coming here to the institution in the United States. So that's why this becomes important, that you know some of the provisions that we're doing. So let me share with you a few things. Plexiglass, if I had a lot of money to invest, I would invest in companies that have plexiglass, because I'm telling you right now, we have bought tons of it, and so have many other schools and many other U.S. businesses. But this first picture that you'll see here, that you see me pointing at, is actually our mail room, where we actually get U.S. mail, and students can send Federal Express packages, DHL, and other things. You can see the plexiglass here. The plexiglass is also right here in a lot of the places where we can move it around, where there's offices where you have to interact with people. So, for example, what we know in terms of COVID from a health standpoint is that COVID is spread through droplets. So as you talk more, you sneeze, or you do other things to that effect, it can actually, the closer you are, it can be spread to other people. So being able to have this plexiglass, and we have it all over campus, in the library, in facilities, in eating facilities, all kinds of things, it just minimizes the exposure that people have to this. So plexiglass as physical barriers will be all over North American campuses in Canada and the United States when the students return, or when the students come here for the first time. Other couple of small things just to keep in mind is we're going to be working really hard to educate people on our systems. And example, this whole thing of staying 6 feet apart and social distancing, physical distancing. And so you can see we've got these all over the floor, all around on doors for people to remember. And then we have specific doors for in, specific doors for out. And we have that all throughout campus. Now, will everybody follow it 100%? Well, obviously there'll be some stragglers and other things, and I'll talk about what I'm going to do on that in just a moment, because we're trying to educate people and not be dictators that's just forcing them to do certain things. We're trying to say, you do your part, you be respectful, and we'll make a safer campus for everybody. So one of the other things that's become very interesting on in and outdoors and things too is that you'll see people actually, all coming in and going on one side or the other. So if you come from a country that drives on the left side of the road, it'll be a little bit odd, because we're telling everybody stay on the right side like it is in the United States. So when you're driving, you're going on the right side. So all the doors will enter on the right. There'll be arrows on the floor that you walk to the right, and then you always do that. So something that'll make international students have to think, especially if they come from countries that drive on the opposite side of the road. So the other thing that we've done is, if I had other money, I would have invested in Puro and all kinds of different hand sanitizers. I've got mine right here. All students that come to Iowa Wesleyan will have, with a keychain, their own special hand sanitizer that will be on their neck chain, that they have their room keys and stuff. There will be bottles all around campus that they can fill up this for hand sanitizer. We're going to have educational signs about washing hands. Washing hands is the single probably biggest thing that we can do to really help students to be able to stop the transmission of COVID-19. And I'm notorious for biting fingernails. I've been working on that myself, but we're going to continue to educate our students about this and how important it is. And they'll be all around campus, touchless hand sanitizers, so that you can actually just get your hands clean as well. This shows on the floor here the arrows too. You can see the arrows going on both sides in hallways. We're doing this throughout the buildings, and we're doing it on steps so that students start to socially distance instead of everyone walking on one side and bumping into each other and other items. We'll have limits on the number of people that can be in an elevator at a time, or the number of people in certain classrooms. And that's a big difference too, is classrooms will be much smaller, and we'll be doing some hybrid formats where maybe half the class meets. If it's a 30-person class, half will meet one day, half will meet another day, and then the other part they'll do it through our Canvas with video lectures. So it's trying to limit the number of people at any given time to help limit the exposure. So also to show you guys, if you look through here, washing hands, this is just one of many signs, but we have signs all over campus. Things talking about wearing face coverings, talking about adhering to social distancing guidelines, all these things. And we have a campus health nurse that's a community health nurse, and her main job is to educate. We have videos with other students talking about it. One's working in the nursing field and as well. Now, if I could suggest anything to any institution that's on this phone call, what many Iowa schools have talked about is this. Every student that comes here, doesn't matter if it's international, American, domestic student, doesn't matter. Every student will sign a social contract after arrival, and it will explain our policy on physical and social distancing. I'm actually, I know that Jim and some of the others will have this, and they can send it out to the post-lecture people here, a copy of what that contract looks like for students to see. But basically, what it's doing is it's telling them, you are going to do everything you can to wear face coverings when it's appropriate within 6 feet of people. When you're in classrooms, you will follow social distancing or physical distancing. You will, just all the different policies and different items that you have there. And then what it's doing, it's a pledge. And so I have them sign the social contract. It's not something legal or illegal, but it's trying to help them feel that they're a part of something much bigger than they are. And it's to make this campus safe. Because the truth is, even on a small campus setting in rural Iowa, if we have an outbreak, again, that happens in a small town like this, then we'd have to close campus and go to fully online again. Now, obviously, with international students, I would make provisions to help take care of them, but we would have to lock down buildings and facilities. So all that becomes very important. So that contract, like I said, that social contract, we'll send you that as an example just to show you what schools are doing. And I'm not the only one doing that, but we are doing it here. The other thing, and the symptoms keep changing and other things, but we do have the ability, and we have been giving temperature scans, but we know that's just one potential symptom of COVID-19. But we have other screening protocols that we're providing for people. That includes a whole list of questions we got from the Center for Disease Control in the United States, the World Health Organization, so that we can be able to ask the right questions, like, have you had a desensitization in smell? Have you had issues with taste? Have you had, there's other questions you may ask them about, have you had stomach issues or diarrhea? Have you had all these different type of medical symptoms? And if those symptoms come back and they say yes, then we would go further into our evaluation with them. Now, here's the trickiest thing that many of us are struggling in rural America, and that really is testing. In a perfect world, I would have what you call as a PCR style molecular test that gives me a result in like 15 minutes. If you went to the United States White House, the president's office actually has this unit right here, which is called an Abbott unit, that's approved by the Federal Drug Administration in the United States. Person puts their finger in there and it does a PCR test, and a PCR test is a test to be able to or saliva test, sorry, and they'll be able to test quite quickly if somebody actually has been infected with COVID-19. There's two types of tests right now, and please understand I'm a doctor but not a medical doctor, so I won't give you great details on this, but PCR test, which we mostly do in saliva and other things like this, and then there's a serological test. The serological test is when you have to drain blood, and then you can use that to test for antibodies in the blood. The difference with the serological test, you can get those cheaper sometimes, but the problem is going to be is it just shows you've been infected in some time, so it doesn't mean it's active. All it would be is a screener for you to have to take a PCR test. So what we're doing now is we will stockpile a certain number of tests, and for people that are flying on airplanes, coming on trains, or mass transportation areas where they have to be around a large number of people, we'll have a number of tests to be able to give to them, and we'll partner with a large research hospital, University of Iowa, and we can actually do those tests for our students, but it will take a couple days because it still has to go to a lab because we can't get the immediate test right now in rural America. So we'll do that, which will be able to allow students for 48 hours, we'll deliver food, but we're trying our best to make sure international students, American students that are flying from other parts of the United States are able to get out pretty quickly from self-isolation. But the reason we're doing that is you can look at large institutions right now, not all of them, but I've read quite a few that they're asking international students, for example, to quarantine for 14 days. We're trying not to do that. I think that's a very difficult situation for our students, especially new ones coming here and others. So we're trying to basically go on and let them come to campus, but we would offer them that COVID-19 test. And then once that comes back clear, if not, we'll keep them quarantined for 14 days and help take care of them the best we can. If they get to a health condition that they need more assistance, we'll partner with our Henry County Health Center, which is HCHC, which is our health center there to be able to take them for treatment. So, but it is important to note there are some schools that have enough money that they're buying one test for every single person when they arrive back on campus. The truth is a COVID-19 test is just one snapshot in time. So if you actually take that test, they could walk out in the next 2 hours, they could get COVID-19. So it's just a snapshot, but it helps everybody feel more comfortable, especially if someone's traveled from a long distance and other items. And we're trying to be as fair to all of our constituents as possible. So that's testing. Now, what do the classrooms look like in this new era? Here's the example of what your classroom is going to look like. See how this is classroom here on the left. You'll see how I've actually spread out all of the desks, and we have a sign outside of the room saying this room only fits this number of students during the pandemic era. And so if that class was supposed to be 20 people, well, they're going to one half meet one day, one half meet another day. They'll record the lectures, or they'll provide other ways for the students to do that. There'll be a line, like this is the front of a classroom, for example. There'll be a line on the floor. The faculty member will be able to teach up at the front of that room, and they can't walk around the classroom, and they need to stay there. And I'll show you in just a second, but the faculty will have a face shield because it is very difficult to be able to lecture in a face mask. All students will get face masks, which I'll show you in just a second, but we're given a couple options for the students. But it is much more difficult and muffled for you to hear me in a face mask. And so we know that that's not possible. And after you do that much with the carbon dioxide that keeps coming back, it can make you lightheaded and other things. So we're trying to be careful. And by the way, when students sit down at these desks, they can actually take their mask off and set it in front of them as long as they stay on their desk, because you know, some people have asthma, they have other issues that make it hard for them to wear a mask all the time. So as long as they're sitting there, we think that it'll be fine. So if we're going to ask students to do so many different things, and faculty staff, we're going to provide PPE, which is personal protection equipment. And so for us, I mentioned about my own hand sanitizer. You can see the type of hand sanitizer the students will have. They'll be able to fill those up. It'll have Iowa Wesleyan on it. They'll be able to get those. The other thing is we have face shields for any student that wants a face shield. And then we have the branded Iowa Wesleyan cloth mask. We have two. The student gets two masks. They're both cloth. They can be washed and reused. If they use one week, maybe use the other one the next week. So we've got 100% cotton face masks that even allows you to put filters in those as well. And then we have face shields. When faculty are teaching in the front of the classroom, they'll wear the face shields, which will give that protection to the eyes and to the mouth and others from when you're speaking, the droplets that come out during conversation. So something to keep in mind. So ultimately, you can't protect everybody 100% of the time. Not everybody's going to follow everything 100% of the time. But what we're trying to do is build a culture of responsibility on campus. And then we're going to do everything we can to help the students. We have been working really hard, night and day, weekends, everything, to make our campus the best and most safe that we can. No campus is foolproof, because when somebody's running around not listening to the suggestions and the things we're doing, well, issues happen. And so there will be discipline for students that don't follow the rules. If we find students that are particularly doing things like we're hearing in the United States, for example, there's COVID-19 parties where you get young people going to a party trying to get infected with COVID-19 so that they can have the antibodies in their blood system because they don't feel like it's going to affect them. And honestly, you don't see as many under 30-year-olds dying from COVID-19. I know it continues to increase, but you don't see it as much as it is with more vulnerable population. But what I try to tell people all the time, it's not about you. Wearing the mask is not about you. Following these rules is not about you. It's about protecting the ones that you care about. It's about protecting the professors in your classroom, the people you care about, your academic advisors who might be a little bit older than you that might have underlying health conditions. It's protecting your own grandma and grandpa or your mom and dad when you go home. So follow these rules. Do what you can do to do the best you can. Also with sports, we right now are planning, because we are a small market sports program, so we actually plan to offer our sporting programs, but NCAA does have some decisions on that, and conferences too. And we will be working really hard to make sure in some events we'll be limited the number of fans that I can actually be able to go in and watch an event. So hopefully this helps out a little bit, but I'm going to flip over to the last slide here, and I'm going to give the floor back to my friend Jim as he comes on here to handle questions and some other items that I might not have covered, because we're trying to get through this in an hour, so about a 40-minute presentation here. So Jim, I'll give the floor back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Frazier and Dr. Alex. Fabulous and really great presentation to start up our discussion and conversation. So to our attendees, we welcome questions. So please chat those in and I will read them out loud. We also really welcome comments. So what you have been doing on your campus, your organization for international students during this pandemic, that you would like to share, we would love to hear those as well. So we already have a number of really interesting questions that we would like to touch on at least a little bit. The first is about what are the admission requirement flexibilities and waivers institutions need to alter or consider during these situations to motivate international students to pursue their study abroad aspirations?
I would like to start out with that, Jim, is that many schools now are going test optional, especially because of the pandemic. And that means, particularly for the United States, we call those tests ACT and SAT. So you're seeing a lot of schools waiving that and having the students come and take either an in-house test or a test that they have on campus. For example, for us, it's AccuPlacer, which was actually a placement test that is a part of the SAT network, but they don't have to pay for that. So being test optional is a huge thing. The challenge, though, is if you don't have some type of test and what embassies will do. I've tried before saying maybe not an IELTS or a TOEFL, but maybe some in-house test that my agency gave, and U.S. embassies don't always accept that. It just kind of depends what's going on there. But some flexibility. I know that TOEFL and IELTS actually has some video proctoring type tests because a lot of their centers have been closed. So given the flexibility to allow students to do that, writing samples, other items, because right now if National Testing Center is closed, it makes it difficult for students to be able to get to the United States with that standardized test. And then the other point that I was saying earlier is on transcripts, be as flexible as you can as an institution, allowing copies of transcripts and not requiring them to have World Education Service credential evaluation or ECD credential evaluations until after the pandemic.
Sure. Thank you so much. The next one is, would institutions also cover the COVID-19 in the international students' health insurance policy, or will there be some changes?
America is probably, I think I know quite a bit about a lot of things, but I'll tell you one thing that changes more than anything is my own personal health insurance in this country. You go from one administration to another and arguing, they make it political, and I'm not arguing one way or the other, but I will tell you that it's very complicated in the United States because it is private insurance. We have some of the best health care in the world, but once again, you have to make sure that they have a comprehensive insurance plan. Now, for my institution, and I'm sure most of with MSN being such a quality organization, I bet all the agencies, all the universities that work with them require this like I do, but we have an insurance plan and I have a company that actually all international students are required to actually take. Now, here's my big thing for you. I do not like insurances you get from your home country because it doesn't always cover you in the United States, and companies in America and hospitals are, I'm sorry if there's somebody on here from a hospital or something, but it seems like they're always trying to find ways that they won't accept types of insurances and other items. So it's better if you come and you get the insurance your university provides for you. COVID-19 is going to be included in all those. It's a respiratory issue, just like the flu and other things. So you're going to be able to get coverage. Obviously, we've seen the horror stories of Americans with insurance getting 40,000 USD bills. I think that the government's really been putting a push against that. So I think under these plans, we'll have pretty adequate coverage. But my word of wise to you guys is to make sure you get the insurance plan the university's providing, because they've negotiated to make sure you're able to get coverage at the local health providers.
Sure. Thank you so much. And this is really insightful for the prospect students as well as the educational consultants in India. The third question is, in the upcoming times, will it be mandatory that the international students need to stay on campus to ensure safety of the students?
It kind of depends. Like if a student already had their own facility or housing, we didn't make them come back to campus, for example. Many small towns like ours just doesn't have a lot of apartments and housing. So very few international students in our experience do that. But when you're in a big university like the University of Iowa or at University of Michigan or University of Minnesota, there's a lot of housing on the outside for apartments. And so a lot of schools are even talking about making more flexibility for people not to live in the resident halls or student hostels, as we say in many parts of the world. But we haven't done that yet, but many schools are doing that because to be honest with you, it is difficult because when you think about a resident hall or a student hostel, it's almost like a cruise ship. There's so many people sharing bathrooms, other items, that it is difficult. So, you know, some schools have these really expensive, nice resident halls where everyone has their own restroom. But that's not what I went to college in. I had to, you know, share a bathroom with a ton of people and other items. So what I do believe is many schools are starting to give more flexibility for international students to live off campus. But usually the general rule of thumb is they want an international student their freshman, sophomore year to get acclimated and stay on campus, and then give them a chance to start living off campus. So I think that's on the table, especially for a lot of institutions that are limited on space, because they would rather be able to have single rooms for all the students in the resident hall. So then they're giving students that option to go off campus. We just don't have the housing in this town, Jim.
Sure, thank you. The next one is having proposed a hybrid format of classes, what if a student starts online classes before getting an F1 visa and unfortunately gets rejected during the visa interview? Will the credits be transferred, or what is the normal process that institutions need to take forward in these situations?
Great question. And if the visa is denied, the student will be able to finish that semester fully online with that distance format, hybrid format. That student will be able to be assigned a grade. They will be able to get the grades for that. And to be honest with you, it doesn't say online, distance ed. It's a transcript, just like a student sitting here in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, face-to-face. So I thought about that as well in the provision, because it's out of the control of the young person if they get a visa or not. We want to make sure that we're being fair and truthful to them, and so they'll be able to finish that semester. And if they wanted to continue, they could be in online classes until they can actually get their visa to come, if they didn't want to, you know, lose out on a year of education. So the really good institutions like MSM schools and my institutions and others, they're going to make sure that that student's able to finish that semester. If I make a promise to you that you can start as a hybrid student, I will let you finish that, because if not, I'm not running with the ethics I need to do.
Sure. And will these students be able to complete the whole program, or it would only be that particular semester that they would be able to complete?
So the hybrid format right now will probably last at least for a year, I think, in the United States. Some schools are doing this, and I'm not the only one. But let's say fall and spring semesters, which for America is August to December for fall and January to May for spring. I am very optimistic that the world is going to find serum and a vaccination for COVID-19, and we will live in a new normal, but I think we'll go back to the opportunities for students to actually be physically on campus. Now, if a student wanted to finish their degree, it depends what degree they wanted to do. Even in the post-COVID world, if I had it online, they could do it online, which is all, like I said, asynchronous, and a student could do that too. The big thing you have to be careful about is some countries in the world don't want to validate online degrees. So if you've never left the country, sometimes you have to be careful about that, because you know, you don't want to earn a degree from an accredited U.S. institution and your home country say, oh, you never left the country. How can this be validated because it was an online degree? So I've worked with a lot of foreign governments over the years, and I won't mention any of them, but there are a few that say that an online education is not valid.
Sure. Thank you so much. The next one is how will international students engage in the online space? How the content should be delivered, and how the synchronized and asynchronized space work together?
So basically what's going to happen, everything's really going to be asynchronous. And that's why I think it's important, because of time zone differences. Because I have a few Australian students whose country is not open for them to leave. They will not be able to arrive here most likely by August 24th, but some of them are starting their courses in the hybrid format. And they're a whole day difference. They're even further than we are from my friends in Cochin or wherever you are, like Jim is in. And so what I've been doing on that is I've been very careful, because all of our classes, if there's a lecture, they don't have to participate when the lecture is going on. The video will be uploaded. They can go back and look at it when it's their daytime, and they can go through and put the information. And we will be very cognizant of that. All my faculty are amazing and working so hard to make sure that this education, because we don't want to disrupt and cause issues for our international students who they can't help it. They have to be home because they're in the same, pandemic that we have too. So none of this would be in that synchronous format. So the interaction is pretty clear. They would get a password and log in. They would have a Iowa Wesleyan email or a partner email, and then they would log into our learning management system. Like I said, for us, that's Canvas. They would do their assignments in there and interact with the faculty member through emails. That faculty member can set up a Zoom meeting with them. We have Zoom accounts for them. It would just have to be at a mutual agreeable time. Obviously, faculty member's not going to want to talk to them at 3 a.m. their time. So sometimes the students are a little bit able to stay up later than some of the faculty members. So, just setting up times, we'll do that with them. That's things we don't do in online either, but you'll see quite a bit of that in the hybrid format, where if the student needs to be able to have a meeting, if we had 5 students in, say the same time zone, all 5 might come together to meet and have a little discussion with the faculty member or something.
Sure. Thank you so much. We only have a few more minutes, and I wanted to kind of ask you the final question for those organizations on the line today who may be still thinking about international education strategies. Perhaps what advice would you give an institution or organization just trying to get started with making these strategies? Yeah, Dr. Frazier, this is the final question. I hope I'm audible, is it?
Yes, please, feel free to ask me a question.
Yeah, so the question is that what would be your advice to institutions that are just starting to strategize their international student recruitment, and if you could just give a small advice to them?
Yeah, in general, from international education, I tell people all the time, and I've known Dr. Parnia, for example, for a long time, been a very good friend of mine. One of the things that you can do is be able to be involved in quality organizations like M Squared Media, MSM, and what they're able to offer. You can be in advocacy groups like NAFSA we talked about, and that's going to give you general information on building the structure and the foundation, but not necessarily how to recruit the students. It's organizations like M Squared Media, agencies I've worked with over the years that I've helped serve and assist, and being able to get that expertise, because here's the truth. You can go and build your own international office and have 3 or 4 people, and then try to pay all the money to send them all around the world to go over and recruit. And you're going to struggle being able to get your return on investment. But if you can build a trusted network of agencies like MSM has done with so many wonderful people in our African continent and the subcontinent as well, that becomes very, very helpful. So for me personally, I've built my recruitment strategies on trusted networks around the world. I have recruitment agencies in Australia, Japan, in mainland China, colleagues like M Squared Media, people in Europe, people in Latin America, some specific to sports for recruitment, because in America, sports is a really big deal in terms of college. So we'll get football players or soccer players. We'll get athletes that come. I have outstanding tennis players from Spain and golfers and other things. So it's stuff like that for me as a small institution. If I was a large institution and I had a lot more money, I could go out and do other things to be able to recruit. But having quality organizations like what Jim and his friends do there with M Squared Media, MSM, is very helpful.
Thank you so much. Dr. Alex, I would also ask your advice to institutions. What would you like to suggest them?
Well, I will join Dr. Frazier and suggest the same thing. I mean, these days, the best thing is to build a strong network. And I believe that no one these days can do things on their own. It has to be a partnership. And that would be the best way for moving forward, that you create a strong partnership with a trusted organization and move forward, because that way you trust someone that can deliver and they can get the information to you, especially for agents around the world. I think the best thing is to work with an organization like MSM and for us to be able to provide the information that they need. For instance, today, we have been able to capitalize on Dr. Frazier's knowledge and background and bring that to the attention of participants, and for them to learn firsthand, not from a third party, fourth party, or whatever, but firsthand from someone that is dealing with the day-to-day academic issues in a strong academic institution in the United States. So these kind of partnerships is critical. And of course, the reason we are doing it with Dr. Frazier, because we have a strong partnership with him. And I will suggest to all participants, if you need additional information about Iowa Wesleyan University, please feel free to contact Jim, and he will be able to give you additional information and provide you with opportunity for your clients that want to apply, even if not for fall, maybe beyond. So with that, I would like to thank Dr. Frazier for joining us today. I know he has a busy schedule, and for him to be available to do this with us. And of course, Jim, for your introduction and the wonderful information that you provided about MSM. If there's no further question, we can conclude this, this conference or webinar.
I would just like to say once again, thank you for everybody coming on there. Thanks to MSM and thanks to Dr. Parnia and Jim. It was great, and got to see that my friend Jim's in Kerala, one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I'll have to come and eat with you sometime, Jim. It'll be great.
Yeah, you're most welcome always.
Once the COVID is over, I'm sure, Dr. Frazier, you'll be traveling to India with all the friends now you have made.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Now, everyone have a great rest of the day, evening, whatever left of it. And we will again inform you about future seminars. And please stay tuned.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.